Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Mondays Down South. If you look at the visual, you'll see not one Zach back this week, but two Zachs. We had to make up for Mr. McCulloch last week by inviting our 500-time fantasy football champion and Zach Kleine, our go-to. If there's one person that I'm willing to admit has had my number in fantasy football throughout the course of my fantasy football career, it is Kleine. I got to tip my cap to this man. He is something special. He's a football expert, if we will. I got to be honest here. I thought I had you this year, man, but you took him from our league again. He's been paying his kids' college tuition with our fantasy football situation. So that's the only intro I'm going to give. I'm going to let Kleine tell you all the rest about himself, where he lives, where he's from. You take over, Kleine.
I was actually really curious, how long it was going to take before we brought up the fantasy league. But yes, thank you so much for you guys having me on. Obviously, I'm Zach Kleine. I live down in the Raleigh area, specifically Holly Springs. Known you guys for at least since middle school, playing backyard sports and stuff, and then keeping on in fantasy. So it's really good to catch up with you guys and hear what's going on. I know when new people come on, you guys talk about what teams they support. Unfortunately, I don't really have a lot of teams. Some soccer teams in the US and the UK, but when it comes to sports over here, it's not much. It's really just fantasy football, football in itself. Shout out USFL as well. It's great to be on with you guys.
I think back to the fantasy football. I think Zach, you now have double the amount of fantasy wins in our league as everyone else on the screen combined. Because Cy and I have 2. Zach obviously has 0. And I think you just hit 8. Unless are we talking championships? We are not talking appearances.
Yeah.
I think, but I don't know if it was 7 or 8. I don't even have the trophy here, but I could have sent it to you virtually. I'm hoping we keep passing it back and forth. But
I'm telling you all, though, this dude's got some magic. I don't know what it is, because, for example, normal years when he wins, I'm like, all right, he had the best team, put together the best team. This year, I was like, I got this guy. I didn't even think he was going to make it out of the first round. I'm sitting here feeling real good about my squad. This is maybe the best squad I've ever put together in our league. And I'm feeling real good. We go into our matchup. I'm projected to win by 20. And then this dude, I don't know what voodoo magic he pulled out of his back pocket, but he got me. And I was like, of course, Kleine won. I can't beat this guy. It's driving me insane. That's all I got to say.
Kleine definitely has instituted a couple of forms of wizardry. I remember one of the last times my team was good. This was probably a couple seasons ago, but I was third place, and this is the week before we went into the playoffs. So definitely getting pretty competitive, going for that bye spot. And Zach was the undisputed number 1 at the time. Or actually, sorry, not undisputed, because Brendan Kittinger was also really good that year, and they were playing each other, so I was celebrating in third place because I was like, oh, I know, one of them is going to lose, so I can just, as long as I win, I can just sneak in as the second bye. And next thing you know, they corroborated together, and they did not play a single roster player that week. So they both drawed, and they ended up getting the number 1 and number 2 seed. I threw the biggest fit for at least 3 or 4 days. I put heavy pressure on the commissioner, who is Mr. Evan Marodi there. But I got to tip the cap. I mean, that was a pretty fantastic move. You got to respect it. And obviously, I was bounced out of the first round of the playoffs. So I blame them for my failures.
That must have been the Derrick Henry year.
And this is why we have Kleine
Derrick Henry year, Zach. Yeah, Derrick
Henry year. There we go. This is why we have Kleine on, though, right? Because he's an expert strategist, and he's going to provide that kind of strategy to the football segment that we'll get to here in a second. Evan, do you have any thoughts before we jump in, buddy? You want to praise Zach for his fantasy acumen as well while we all do so?
No, I'm all good. I got it out of my system. I'm looking forward to getting the trophy back next season, and we'll just keep the trend of sending it from North Carolina to New York. Yeah.
I mean, not only has Kleine had everybody's number in fantasy football, including yours, Si, which I'm glad you admitted because I was curious to see how much you were willing to disclose there. But Kleine is the fantasy GOAT in our league. But also, from a hairstyle standpoint, Zach Kleine back in middle school, man, he was rocking that long, wavy blonde hair. And Clay Matthews, Zach had inspired Clay Matthews, I'd like to think, and the AJ Hawks of the world to go ahead and follow suit. So yeah, that was Kleine back in the old middle school days. There, it was hilarious.
Yeah, we're not calling back. We're gonna need to pull up a picture of that and also have you back for some soccer segments because I know that was inspired by your soccer playing days. You're definitely one of our go-tos for that. So anyway, we'll transition from European football to NFL football. I think we all know what we're going to talk about right off the bat, which is the weekend's games. MDS was very accurate on some, but was also very not accurate on plenty. So we can definitely take a little bit of crap this weekend because I think we each hit or missed on different areas. Kleine obviously was not on last week, and Bakulik sent his picks virtually. However, we'll start with the first game. I don't know if you guys want to go in the particular order of how it went down this weekend or if you have any preference, but I was going to tee up I don't know. I'll leave it up to you guys. But cool, you got a game you want to start with?
Yeah, let's just start with the Saturday Kansas City Chiefs game and the Jacksonville Jaguars. I mean, obviously, like very, very big scare right off the jump with Pat Mahomes having it looked like an ankle, almost looked like a knee injury. I think it was diagnosed as an ankle, but seeing him evade defenders on the field and then seeing him evade doctors on the sideline was pretty hilarious. Like you gotta respect the guy for trying to play and put his team first, and obviously came back and solidified them in a solid position to win the game there. But overall, great win for Jacksonville. Great performance for Jacksonville, I should say. Just this whole season, winning that division, which really everyone thought was going to be the Titans until they lost 7 straight. So I think it's going to be a really, really interesting matchup. We'll talk next week with Cincinnati coming into town. But it's hard to win an Arrowhead, and the Chiefs got it done. But, Kleine, I'll turn it over to you. Anything specifically interesting in this game that maybe caught you by surprise, or did this kind of go as expected?
It really did pretty much just go as you expected. I feel like the Jags, they just by getting to this point, they probably exceeded anybody's expectations. I think there's a team they can be really optimistic for in the future. Obviously getting Calvin Ridley is going to help a lot. But you can't really expect to go into Kansas City and get a win, like you said, Bakulik. Yeah, even with Pat Mahomes playing on one leg. So not a whole lot.
Yeah, I'll jump in and say that one was pretty straightforward. I mean, if Mahomes didn't get hurt, I think we were kind of spot on. I think we all expected it to be probably a 2-possession game. I think it came down to 1-possession game because Mahomes was off the field for a little while. But if he had stayed on, probably wouldn't have been as close. Still, shout out to the Jaguars' amazing season. I think they obviously have a super bright future. Good point about Calvin Ridley, too. I actually completely forgot about that. So they have some things to get excited about. Also, I want to give a huge shout out to Doug Peterson because I think when he got let go by the Eagles, he got a lot of flack, and he's somebody that I always believed was better than people gave him credit for. And I think he really showed that this year with a young team, and also just to see the players rally around him. They really love that guy. So I'm bummed he's in my division because you want to watch that guy coach up a good team for years. So that's all I got with that one.
Yeah, not much to add. I'll shout out Chad Henne because the biggest drive of that game was that 99-yard touchdown drive he put together. And Zach Bakulik, to your point, the Pat Mahomes story, I heard the quote kind of, or how it went down was hilarious, that he's on the sideline like, no, put me back in. And then the coaches are like, no, you need to go get x-rays done. And he's like, no. And they're like, well, if you can't go get x-rays, we can't put you back in the game because you might have a broken foot or something. So he's like, all right, they sprint to the back, get the x-rays done in that one drive, and he comes back in the game. Pretty cool, but we'll see how he is next week, man. High ankle sprain, playing on it a week after, that is going to be brutal. But I'm sure we'll talk about that a little later on.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure. I think we jump to the next one. The next one, I'll go first because I was absurdly wrong, and I deserve to get roasted for that. I think the Giants to outright win that game. because I was like, oh, they're not going to lose a third time in a row. This will be a close game. They played so well last week. Daniel Jones is a top 10 quarterback. Saquon Barkley is a baller. Nope, none of those things came to fruition. Eagles absolutely stomped on them. There's not anything exciting about this game other than the fact that the Eagles look like the best team in the NFC like they have all year, with the exception of when Hurts was hurt, no pun intended. And yeah, I don't really even know if there's analysis for this one. All I know is there's clearly a big separation between the Eagles and the rest of their division, even if that division was successful this year, because they just straight up stomped on them. That's all I got for that one.
Yeah, I think this one, like, watching the Eagles play, again, horrendous bet on our part, like, thinking that, the Giants would be able to keep this one close. This is, like, back to earlier in the regular season when it was like, how is it even possible to beat the Eagles in Lincoln Financial when everyone's healthy and they're playing well? I mean, like, the only team that did it was the Commanders, and they got a couple lucky breaks in that game to pull that off, and they, basically controlled the ball the whole game. So it's going to be tough, man. I mean, they just look amazing at home now that, and the biggest thing I think is Jalen, like you said, Cy, he looked, pretty much fully healthy. He was able to run, pretty much able to do everything. So obviously that's huge. So, but
you gotta love the coach too. Just Sirianni, like for the Eagles, he's just hilarious to watch on the sideline. Did you guys see the play where he just ran all the way to the goal line and then he got mad at the ref and he was like, I know what I'm doing. Like, it's like he's always trying to prove himself. He's almost trying to like artificially create enemies. Like, no one really hates him, but I think he has the portrayal that people do, and he almost looks for that because it gives him fuel to continue to like game plan to the best of his ability. But like this offense is just a juggernaut. And I think one thing to really definitely talk about is the depth that they have. Like Kenneth Gainwell just went off. All of their corners they played elite football. Like they were covering every single Giants receiver up and down the field. Not that that's really saying a lot outside of maybe like Darius Slayton. But the Eagles are coming to play. They're angry, and that's the exact attitude they need for this next matchup here, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit later. But yeah, Kleine, closing thoughts there on Philly?
You'll never really catch me talking about defense much, if at all. But just that D line and the depth that they have, and just the amount of guys in double-digit sacks this year, it's really problematic for any offense, especially one that is lacking in offensive firepower like the Giants do. And then also just the depth they have in the secondary. It's just going to be so hard to beat them. And I'm sure we'll get ahead to this, but it's really hard for me to see them, losing the 49ers.
Yeah, I think we talked about early in the year their struggles on the like interior defensive line after Jordan Davis went down, and that was going to be a problem for them. They filled those holes immediately with Ndamukong Suh and some other guys. Ndamukong Suh isn't the guy he was, but they got bodies in there. What else was I going to say? We should shout out the Giants too, though, similar to how we did the Jaguars. Those Giants on a great season, but
Dable deserves a lot of credit for that.
Let me ask you this, guys, because I know the award is supposed to exclude any playoff type of like occurrences, right? It's just only regular season. But like Kleine, let me ask you this: who do you think wins Coach of the Year, Brian DeBull or Sirianni? Who do you think is more deserving?
To me, it's Dable. It's really not even close. I mean, it kind of like it seems like the criteria for something like Coach of the Year is a little up in the air. But I think of just what you look at, like how much Dable got out of that team versus what anybody would have expected, is far superior to even how great of a season that Philly had. Like I said, superior, like inferior weapons all over the field, just getting the most out of every player they had, exploiting the weaknesses of pretty much any team that they came across. If I had a vote, it would be Dable, hands down.
I actually think it should be Shanahan. That's my personal opinion. But it's probably his whole like being good for years probably will take smoke away from him or take it away from him. But if we want to talk about dealing with injuries and dealing with basically any hand that was dealt to you and still putting together a winning product the entire season, there's nobody that did it better than him. I mean, you lose your starting quarterback first week of the season, then you get your second quarterback and you lose him, and then you take Mr. Irrelevant and you make your team still one of the top seeds in the NFC and make it to the playoffs. Like, that is insanely impressive. So, but I mean, we'll get to that game, but I just wanted to throw his name out there because I feel like he's not getting enough love for this season, maybe because we're just tired of Shanahan being good, similar to like maybe NBA MVPs, the way we talk about it.
Yeah, I've got to go Dable as well. I'm with Kleine. What about you?
I'll put in a vote for Nick. I mean, I think we all expected the Eagles to be decent, but I mean, the level of dominance they showed throughout the regular season, I don't think anyone expected. So
You really can't go wrong with any of them, can you? Yeah.
all right, next game, Sunday afternoon, the game I was most excited for. I had this pegged as game of the year, especially when you see the snow coming down in Orchard Park, man. This thing was poised to be a barn burner. Unfortunately, we got nothing close to that. I think it was a 27-10 final. The Bengals pretty much dominated from the jump. Bills' offense was terrible. Bills' defense was terrible. Bengals' offense was great. Bengals' defense was great. Pretty boring game. I guess, Kleine, you want to start this one off for us, just with your thoughts?
Yeah, like you said, Cincinnati, came out and they pretty much just all right, we're just gonna pound the ball and we're just keep moving down the field and you are not gonna stop us. There's really a growing trend that the Bills hate big games, especially in the playoffs. They've just not. They're missing that spark or that piece. Maybe it could have been Von Miller this year. I don't know. Probably not. But they also, the thing concerning with the Bills is that they just don't have a lot of talent outside of Steph Diggs for skill position players. Gabe Davis showed you he's not really that good of a receiver. Isaiah McKenzie couldn't consistently hold down the slot. They had to bring guys in like Cole Beasley and John Brown. You can't really expect to make a Super Bowl run with guys like that. Dawson Knox is probably at least above average, but if you're really relying on them as top players, you can't really expect to get too far, even with Josh Allen. And you just saw it here. I mean, the Bengals are just poised. They're ready. They're hungry. In hindsight, really, the Bills, they didn't. I don't want to say they didn't stand a chance, but they got outed fast.
Yeah, catch those refund tickets for sure. That was the ongoing theme of the Cincinnati Bengals these last couple games. But I kind of knew this game was over in the pregame when Joe Burrow was chucking those 360-degree passes where he's throwing them in the air and then twirling around in warm-ups. I was like, uh-oh, he's ready to rock today. So I actually picked the Bills until I saw that moment. I was like, uh-oh, that cannot be good for us. That cannot be good for the MDS bets, which we got slaughtered this week, I feel like. But I think ultimately, yeah, Cincinnati's defense, they're stepping up to the equation. And all three of their corners are playing well above average. Including guys like Eli Apple, too, who you almost thought their career was over based on the amount of teams that they've been on. But, so shout out to them. Obviously, Joe Burrow, just a ton of poise, throwing 80% completion rating in the snow, totally unfazed by everything that was going on. You thought it was going to be a big game for Buffalo and advantageous for them playing in snow before, but they got completely worked. And Zach, you brought up a really good point of them missing that one piece on the offensive side of things. And I think the Bills really thought that was going to be James Cook this season. And I know he's a rookie, and I don't mean to bash him at all, but it was a pretty disappointing year for him. He had a flurry of maybe 2 or 3 interesting games, but when you can't outplay Devin Singletary and you can't really take a commanding role in that offense, I'm just curious to see how they're going to use him next year because he has the playmaking ability to be a pass-catching guy, almost like his older brother, but just did not showcase those skills when it mattered. So, yeah, go Bengals.
Go ahead, E.
All right, I wanted to flame Zach real quick. So I'm watching this game.
Go ahead.
Cy had Bengals outright. I know you're going to talk about that. The Bengals covering was my favorite bet of the week. And then Zach comes in here. He's super confident the Bills are going to come out, play their best game of the year, and they're going to kill the Bengals. And then we're talking about it, in the chat over the weekend. After this game, I'm about to congratulate Zach on a brilliant Super Bowl pick, which was Eagles-Bengals. And it occurs to me that you picked the Bengals to go to the Super Bowl 3 weeks ago, and then this week you're telling me the Bills are going to stop the Bengals? And you out here cost us a lot of money. I'm like, what is going on? So I'm going to blame you for jumping us off the ledge onto the over, which wasn't even close. Just ruining our picks. But yeah, I think Kleine made some good points on missing pieces. Von Miller was playing really well, so that was a big piece going down. They had a lot of guys go down, but and Josh Allen, I don't want to make excuses for him because he played terrible the last 2 weeks. And then Cy will talk on this, so I don't want to steal his point. But that UCL injury That's a pretty big injury to play through. So I have to think that was a bigger factor because I had completely forgotten about it. So I have to think that was a bigger factor than it seemed with how he played down the stretch. But I'll pass to Cy for his takes on this one.
Yeah, no, I'm done making excuses for Josh Allen. I don't give a crap about the UCL or whatever it is. I'm done with this nonsense. I'm also done with the whole, you don't have enough weapons around you, blah, 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 BS, because Patrick Mahomes, that's Travis Kelce, and then who, right? Like, I mean, if we want to make excuses for Allen, let's compare him to Kelce. And Kelce is what, an AFC Championship again, per usual? I said at the beginning of the year, and I want to make one thing clear before I completely roast him, because I don't want this to make it seem like I was, like, rooting against the Bills or anything. I genuinely, like, think Josh is a great dude, and Stephon Diggs is so easy to root for. That team in general was such a great storyline, and I would have loved for them to have won, and I said that prior to the game. But I'm just tired of people just proclaiming Josh Allen as like the same tier as Patrick Mahomes and this and that. What, because his signature playoff moment was losing to Patrick Mahomes last year in the playoffs? Like, this is what I said at the beginning of the year. Week 2, I came on here, and I roasted myself for picking the Giants, but I'm going to pat myself on the back for this take, because week 2, I said, I'm tired of people acting like the Bills are going to be the best team in the NFL and they're going to go like undefeated and they're going to run the table of the Super Bowl, because so far they have not proven an acumen for winning the big game in the playoffs. And that's why I picked the Bengals this week, because Joe Burrow has that dog in him and Josh Allen does not. He just doesn't. Like, he hasn't won the game. Last year it was close, but he didn't win the game. And this year, if we want to make excuses for the UCL, and I'm not blaming you guys for doing it, I agree that's a big injury. Flip side of that is he's still throwing lasers. Like, I mean, there was plenty of passes that he's throwing, 50-yard passes, like off his back foot with ease. So I don't think that's the problem. I think the problem is he just hasn't been able to show that he can win the big game yet. And I don't think it's a lack of weapons, because there is a lot of people in the NFL who do not have the weapons that he do. Even if you want to talk about the second guys, a lot of people don't have Stephon Diggs, arguably the second best route runner in the NFL next to Devontae Adams. And he barely used him that game. That's why Stephon Diggs was yelling at him in the sideline. And the other thing is, he scored 10 points, guys. 10 points. Like, what are we making excuses for here? The Bengals and Joe Burrow went up and stole his lunch money. That's what happened this game. And until Josh Allen gets out there and proves to me that he can win a playoff game, I'm tired of this take, because he has all the talent in the world. But until you can do something with that talent, I just don't get this whole, like, oh, you're a top-tier quarterback. No, I'm sorry, you're not. Patrick Mahomes is in a tier of his own, and Burrow is better than you. And Burrow just showed it this weekend, and that's how I feel right now. So I'm not going to be easy on Josh Allen after I said all year you got to prove it to me.
Burrow's on that tier too, but I think we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
Be a good
I was going to say, now I'm really interested to see how that shakeup at the QB position is for everyone. But I'll kick it off for the last game here. So Dallas going up to San Francisco, playing in Levi Stadium there. I wasn't able to catch the majority of this game, but from what I heard, it was an interesting game. Obviously, up until the end, with Dallas trying to claw their way back up, or at least I should say down the field. Dak Prescott is the most interceptions in the league by a long shot, and he obviously showed that again today. But our boy Brett Maher did come in clutch, and he did kick 2 field goals. We believe that our guy Mondays Down South believes in resiliency, and we put our money where our mouth is. So, congrats, Brett, for at least making 2 field goals, although I did hear that extra point would have been shanked to, 50 yards to the left if that thing didn't get blocked. So it was kind of a miracle it did. But, Kleine, I'll kick it over to you. What were some of your initial thoughts with both teams, and I guess how San Francisco is going to fare out moving forward?
I was really hoping we were going to kick it to me next. I only want to talk about the last play. There's really nothing else that I would want to talk about. Just the sheer poetry in motion of Dallas just trying to claw at any opportunity they can and just failing miserably at that. I understand that, when you're down like that and you have 1 play left, your odds are so small. I mean, it's minuscule. So, I mean, anything I think they were trying to do something creative, innovative, and I can appreciate that. But just the pure poetry of Zeke snapping the ball and just getting plowed over as a punishment for 2.6 yards per carry this year. Plowed over immediately. And then throwing the ball to, Devontae Turpin 5 yards down the field. And then not having I assume they're trying to lateral the ball and kind of set that whole thing up. And you have the blockers out wide, so they can get down the field sooner and, create some sort of like, front for him. But like, did nobody think like they should just, put the blockers in front of the guy catching the ball so that he wouldn't get blown up immediately once he caught it? Like, he didn't have time to do anything. Like, he just got blown up and it was it. Like, that was it. Like, I have not like laughed that hard at any sort of like football moment in probably ever, because it was just so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. And I don't even know what else happened in the game. Like, Dak was terrible. Brock Purdy's, we'll talk about him later maybe, but hopefully not, because if we're doing like top 10, then no. But, he's just executing the offense the way it's supposed to be. And, that's exactly what San Francisco wanted them to do. So
I want to jump in real quick. I want to jump in real quick because you said you've never laughed. The reason I got very excited, and by no means I want to cut you off, but I want to jump in real quick because you said you've never laughed as much. And to be fair, my Colts play was still worse because we didn't even make a completion. But that's the closest thing to it that I've seen. So as a Colts fan, I was super happy because I was like, all right, the worst play people will remember will be the Cowboys one from recency bias. So it made me feel a lot better. But cool, like, if you haven't had a chance to watch a play, I don't know if you had a chance.
Oh, I've seen it. I've seen it.
You've seen it? I was going to say, if there's one person who would enjoy this more than anybody, it would be you. So I wanted to make sure that you had a chance to watch it because I was actually thinking of you. I was like, I wish I could see Zach's reaction right now. Like, it was so
That's
funny.
a play I'd probably draw up, to be honest. That sounded like that looked like a backyard football play back from 08, 09. That was they took that straight out of the offensive playbook for one of our teams back in the day. But yeah, that was atrocious.
Yeah, just my take on the play. The last time I laughed that hard at something like that was last year, the way the Cowboys ended that game with that QB draw that they didn't have enough time. But I kind of want to go last in terms of my analysis of that full game because I feel like Stephen A. Smith right now, which is my favorite feeling to feel about football. But yeah, that play, they just find a way to make themselves look dumb. Like, you could have, like Zach said, just do a couple laterals and no one bats an eye, like, good effort. But like, they find a way to make themselves be laughed at. But takes on the game though.
I want to say real quick before Evan absolutely rips into him and lays him a new one. I think obviously we know where Evan's going to come from. He's going to flame the Cowboys, and reasonably, understandably so. But I also think that just as much as, Dak struggled and threw the interceptions and whatnot, I think San Francisco should get just as much credit for winning a close game and having this incredible defense that they do, being able to I can't think of the last time someone's gone off on that defense. That defense is rock solid from the line all the way to the back, and it's like I can't figure out what a solution to that defense will be, and that's why I'm super excited for next week's matchup because like that defense is insane, guys. Like the pass rush, the linebackers, you go from, it's actually absurd that you go from Nick Bosa to Fred Warner to like Ward and those guys in the backfield. Like it's just unfair. So. And then you have the plethora of Deebo Samuels and Christian McCaffrey and Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle. I mean, it's like I said last week. You could throw one of us out there at quarterback, and it would be somewhat easy. Like, I don't know. It's absurd. But that's all I really want to say before this turns into a Dallas sucks and we don't really talk about San Francisco part.
Cool. I guess you didn't watch the game too closely. You got anything else?
Yeah, well, one thing that upsets me is of how great of a season Tony Pollard played. And I respect the fact you guys gave him a shout out last podcast. But there was another statistic that Kleine brought up with like the 2.6 yards per carry for Zeke. And the fact that Zeke is making $20+ million a year, completely deteriorating like year over year in the running back position, where like he dropped like a very significant ball that was almost a pick in the red zone. Like, you just cannot do those things in the playoffs. But like the reason I bring this up is because Tony Pollard completely outplayed Zeke, kind of kept Dallas very competitive throughout this entire season. It was like a focal point of that offense. And then to see him go down with his injury while he's on his now on his contract year, and he's going to be fielding the variety of different offers from different teams. Hopefully that doesn't limit his upside and limit his contract ability in terms of getting the maximum deal that he can possibly manifest. So it was just kind of like something rough to see where you see his counterpart making $20-something million a year, really doing nothing, like almost looking like lethargic on the field in Zeke Elliott. And then you have this like really dynamic player in Tony Pollard who then goes down, sacrificing his body for his team late in the game. and that might affect the his contract situation as he signs his new deal. So just thought that was a little bit rough, but obviously I'm impressed that he's well deserved the shout out. So I'm proud of you guys for giving him one last week.
Yeah, that was too bad, but that actually leads me into Kellen Moore, right? If I'm ranking, people that need to be blamed for this one, Mike McCarthy's actually not that high on the list this year, but Kellen Moore, man, I mean, that one play is a good example, but like Pollard goes out of the game, they make no adjustments, like with Zeke, completely different back in the game, and I love seeing everyone with their pants down again this year that started to buy into the Cowboys. Like so many people this year, I feel like it gets more and more every year. People buying into the Cowboys that this is the year the talent comes together. And every year it's the same story, man. Stephen A. Smith always says, and I love it, what can go wrong will go wrong. They found a lot of things to go wrong today. Most notably, Dak Prescott, biggest game of his life, probably the worst game he's ever played in his life. He was an absolute nightmare. He got below a 40 on PFF, which I have got to think is one of the worst games any quarterback has played all year. He ended with 2 interceptions. He could have easily had 4 or 5. He missed 3 or 4 touchdown throws down the field, like to CeeDee Lamb. I mean, and to your point, the way you expose the 49ers defense is their corners. They're not elite corners. They're honestly not that good. And, what is the game plan here? CeeDee Lamb was torching them, and they just couldn't get him the ball. He should have gotten, 12, 15 targets. They should have just been feeding him, which is on Kellen Moore. And Dak was a disaster. I mean, that's really the story of this game. If you switch quarterbacks, I think Dallas wins. The defense was incredible. I mean, Micah and those guys, as they played all year, was fantastic. They really should have won this game if they had mediocre to average quarterback play. I really think they win this game. I don't think San Francisco did particularly well. Kittle saved Brock Purdy with that incredible catch and then the holding penalty in the end zone. That was really their only touchdown drive. I just think Dallas had a shot here thanks to their defense, and this is one they should have won, but Dak was honestly one of the worst quarterback games I think I've ever seen in such a big spot.
Say one thing, though, real quick about Kellen Moore. I won't disagree with you that this was bad offensive coordinating for this game. Flip side is it's hard to plan for losing somebody as effective as Pollard has been this season, as we mentioned. But the other thing with Kellen Moore, and even with Dak for that matter, is obviously the big moments, the playoff games that matter count the most. And I think, earlier you were saying there's a lot of people that are on the, that were saying the Cowboys are going to put it together now. I haven't heard a lot of people that have said that, and I also think we all agree that San Francisco was the better team coming into this. Sure, they should have showed out more. I don't dispute that. This isn't me making excuses for him. Obviously, I feel the same way about Dak that I do Josh Allen, where it's you haven't had your big signature moment. But at the same time, the big point I want to make about Kellen Moore specifically is he found a way to keep that offense relevant and to win games from the offensive front, even when Dak was hurt this year. And he also is one of the reasons that even though, as you alluded to, Jerry Jones wants to still feature Ezekiel Elliott, he found a way to make Tony Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott work in the scheme of this offense, and they had a very good offense for the majority of the season, even with Dak out, and they won a lot of games. So I don't want to knock Kellen Moore. I think he's going to be a good offensive coordinator and head coach going forward for future teams, and I think this was a bad showing on his part, but I think it's a little unfair to him to have that recency bias of this week determining that. Same way I feel about Dak. I don't think Dak was ever, he was kind of working his way back, and I don't think he was ever fully what he's capable of being. I still think Dak is a top 10 quarterback, but that kind of alludes to the perfect next topic of conversation, unless Kleine and Zach Bekulik have something else they want to say.